Vice President Schaefer?
Yes?
Secretary Reese? Here. Treasurer Hanser?
Present.
Treasurer, or Trustee McDonough?
Here.
Oh my gosh, said that wrong, so sorry. Trustee Summers?
Here.
Trustee Whitney?
Here.
Trustee Schultz?
Here.
Do you want me to announce this?
Sure.
Okay. So according to bylaw 0171.2, when the president's chair has been vacated midterm, the vice president succeeds to that president's chair. So the first order of business tonight for the board to act on is to approve the succession, actually it's not even an election, to I guess recognize the succession of Vice President Schaefer to President Schaefer. So as I said to her in my office the other day, she is now Madam President. So that's done, but now that leaves the Vice President seat open. And so, Heather, do you want to call for nominations?
I do. Pardon? Okay, go ahead.
I have a motion. Move that Dr. Aaron Reese be nominated.
Move that Dr. Aaron Reese be nominated to the position of Vice President for the remainder of the 2023 calendar year.
Discussion?
Aaron, are you interested in the position?
I would gladly accept it, thank you.
Any discussion? Anybody? No? Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. Aaron?
Trustee Whitney?
Yes.
Trustee Schultz?
Yes.
Trustee Summers?
Yes.
Trustee McDonough? Yes. Treasurer Hanser?
Yes.
Do I vote for myself? Yes?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
All right, yes, I vote for myself. President Schaefer.
Yes. Okay. So
That moves us into freeing up the secretary position. So calling for a nomination for board secretary. Are there any nominations for board secretary?
Yeah, I'd like to make one if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I'd like to move that James Summers be nominated to the position of secretary for the remainder of the 2023 calendar year.
Okay. Do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
So
I accept.
That would in reality be a second,
Okay.
right? You could, if you want to accept, if you were to accept the nomination, that would like be the same as a second. You would second the motion.
You're saying he's supporting that.
Right.
I support myself. Yes.
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Discussion?
Discussion? Okay.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Whitney?
Go ahead.
Like, yeah, I still do it this last time, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And then you get to do the rest.
Oh, great.
If you win, I'm just saying.
Okay. Yes.
Trustee Schultz?
Yes.
Trustee Summers?
Yes.
Trustee McDonough?
Yes.
Treasurer Hanser?
Yes.
Vice President Reese, yes. Vice
Pres-
President
okay.
Schaefer.
Yes.
That was a little too humorous, sorry. I apologize.
She probably needs some rest, so she can sit here.
That's all right. Okay, school presentations.
Consent agenda.
Oh, sorry.
Right, am I right? Changes to the board.
Changes to the board agenda? No, I don't think so.
Schedule. Okay, I got it.
I don't believe there's any changes.
No, so don't we go to school presentations?
No,
Do I have the wrong one?
You have the wrong agenda.
Sorry, President. I have notes on that one, no, I want to keep that, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that, I had the wrong one. Schedule public comment for agenda items only? Nothing? Okay. Consent agenda. We have the minutes from the last couple of meetings, both on the 13th and the 27th of June. We have the new hire recommendations. I think we all received the resumes of the new hires. There's several. As there are several postings going into the next year, this is always a big hiring time. And then we have our bills payable for June 2023. Want to read it? Mary?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support? Aaron? Discussion? Anyone have any discussions about the positions or anything? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposing? Consent agenda is approved. Superintendent's report?
Yes, I'm going to coordinate with Allison, who's going to be the slide mover there. Thank you. So, pardon?
Which one do you want?
That's fine. Whatever order they're in is fine. So we had been accumulating, as you know, data over the course of the year on suicide assessments, threat assessments, and bullying dispositions of cases, and we have pulled that annual data together. If you'll recall, we had a big kind of switchover in around suicide assessments. You did a new policy in, I think it was February-ish, and March-ish. We had redone the administrative guideline. We put kind of a new reinforced protocol in place. So this is where we have sat during the course of the year in terms of the numbers. You'll notice that we have a column called no level indicated. That mostly occurred in the beginning half of the year before we had Navigate 360 operating. And the fix there is through Navigate 360 now. That should not appear again because there should be a required level that gets reported into low, moderate, or high risk. We had the words dangerous instrumentalities. That's how the suicide protocol, procedure, and policy talk about making sure that the student has no immediate access or any later access to what we would consider weapons. We use instrumentalities in this case because in a suicide situation, the instrument by which they might be choosing to try to harm themselves could be over-the-counter drugs you get at any Walgreens. It could be using food and their own eating disorder. It could be a lot of different things that aren't typically considered weapons, as you would consider the word when we're doing threat assessments. So we had 36% overall inquiring about these dangerous instrumentalities, but in the from February on, after we did the policy and we redid the protocol, that went up to 57%. We're finding that still people are not thinking of, oh, this student thinks they're going to harm themselves by running to the drugstore and buying iron pills and overdosing on iron pills, and so they don't necessarily write it as what in their head would be a weapon. So some of this is further training on the staff to say, yes, even if it is over-the-counter drugs, if it's going to be used to do them bodily harm, you need to consider that a weapon. And even though you've made sure they don't have the drugs on them, you have to remember to check the box on the form. So some of this is underreporting because nobody is checking the form as an instrument of harm because of the nature of the suicide risk. Some of it is also, we found that in the Navigate 360, there's two ways you can answer questions. You check your options, and sometimes a box is required, and if you don't answer that box, you can't go on. That wasn't the case in checking for these dangerous instrumentalities. Allison has now fixed that, and from this point on, you won't be able to go further in the suicide protocol without checking that box that you either actually checked for the instruments or that you checked and didn't forget to check the box. Either of those two things may have been happening. So we're looking at getting that improved before we come back to you. You'll see that the middle school and the high school were where most of these suicide risk assessments were done. You'll see that out of 117, we had 11 considered high risk, 23 moderate risk, and 65 low risk, with my previously pointed out 18 unclassified. Any questions on the suicide ones before I move to threat assessment?
Is there narrative in the instrumentalities? So that way,
it gives examples in the administrative guideline, not necessarily on the Navigate 360 form that people are filling out.
I added the exact language.
Oh,
from
did you?
The administrative
Okay.
guideline and the board policy into, there's two sections, it's either on or nearby their person. And then the additional question is, do they have access to the dangerous instrumentality? And then in parentheses, it defines what it is in alignment with our board policy and administrative guidelines.
Because that was also something from
Yes.
Guidepost, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, so it's,
I have a quick one.
that's good.
Sorry. So, does it matter which way they start answering the questions to get that prompt? Because from my understanding, that prompt should happen on threat and suicide at the beginning level for each. So, basically what I'm asking is it asked every time on suicide and threat now?
Yes, there's 3 spots in the threat assessment where they can't move on until it's there. It's a required component. And then there's now the 2 spots on or nearby the person and then access to. And those are required, so they can't move forward in the screen. You can't close it, you can't do anything since they are required.
And there's not a certain path that they could take that those questions would not be asked?
Right.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. That all the questions on suicide?
Can I just ask, I'm sorry, I do have a question, Vicki. When you talked about the no level indicated, that's from a previous system. So we won't see that column on the next round
Well-
because they're all going to be classified moving forward, is that correct?
They should all be classified going forward if
Okay.
everybody fills out the form correctly. The classification comes at the end of the form, right?
Yes.
So we can't really stop them from doing the form until they put it in. I don't know if there's a way of stopping them from logging out until that's filled in to make it fail-safe.
But in order to close it, they would have to,
In order to close it,
Yes.
they do? Okay, good. So,
and that will be something that's adjusted as I will, myself and Mr. Vernier, we will be meeting with every campus monthly to review their data as well as provide any professional learning. And those, with the exception of 2 campuses, have all been scheduled already.
Great, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is more of a comment than a question, and it seems kind of silly, but obviously there's different protocols with the numbers that come in for low risk, moderate risk, and high risk, right?
there's different plans, yes.
Plans, protocols,
Yes, right.
whatever our FSLs or counselors are doing. So I might be interested in getting that information at some point too. So as a parent and as a board member, it's important, I think, for us to know with everything that happened too, like for low risk people, what are we doing? And then if and when they might move to a moderate, or that's just even another student, and then high, what the difference is.
We can provide that for you.
Okay.
Then moving on to threat assessment.
Just one other question
Oh,
too,
yes.
just helpful, especially for those of us who haven't been here beyond this academic year, is if, I know it's no level indicated previous, but if there are moving forward trending data year to year or quarter to quarter, however, just to make sure that we're not missing out on kids, and increasing, identifying.
Once we move to the
Opportunities.
Navigate 360, we'll be able to trend. These numbers, and we can even trend against these numbers, even though Navigate 360 was only here since April, because we collected every handwritten suicide assessment from every building from September forward. And we entered those manually in order to get these full numbers. So this data will trend going forward. What we hope to not see is the 18 no level indicated, so that they could go forward. Now, what I don't know is how many of these 18 were no level indicated because they felt there was really no risk. So there may still be no risk. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, but we don't know for sure if it was
Well, we'll
truly
be
a no.
trending it moving
Yeah,
forward to
right.
make sure, 'cause
right.
this is a resource question, right?
Yes.
Right.
And we'll be able to
Making
look
sure
at
we
that.
have appropriate resources for our kids if we're starting to see things change.
And we'll be able to look at in the analytics section of Navigate of how many open cases there are or closed cases per student. So if there is a student that we're seeing, what is going on? Is it escalating? Is it lowering? Is it baseline behavior? And that also will be addressed during those monthly meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the threat assessments. You'll see that we had a total of 117 done this year, and according to the Guidepost report, that's 300% more than a typical school, which surprised me because that would take that 117 down quite a bit, reducing it by 300%. But so I don't know. That's the number they gave us. Again, we had no priority indicated, and I believe on these particular threat assessments, and because of the way the form was and the way we collected it, am I right, Allison, in indicating that that means that after they did the assessment, no threat was perceived?
Correct.
So, then you had 102, most of them, as you can see, were minimal priorities, some moderate, and no high and no imminent. 98% was inquiring about access to weapons. That means on the form, the boxes were checked. Now remember, when a student at the secondary level is reported for a threat assessment, they are also automatically wanded. So there's a physical check for weapons as well as the verbal review. That's the data. Any questions on that? As Allison already said to you, she has scheduled herself and her team in every building where this is going to be ongoing review, ongoing training. We're still in a learning curve. You know, the new system just went in place in April. People don't become habitual or automatic on a new system for a while, but I think we're getting there. Okay?
I think just going back to Mary's question on the last slide, it's just understanding the differences between the levels, or was that Heather's, in the interactions, you know, because 102 minimal priority, to me, I'm not sure I know what that means.
We can provide that for you.
We'll get that to you.
Because and this goes back to the guidepost question too, you know, if we're doing too much and there's that many in the minimal priority, is there trending similarities between them that maybe we're stressing kids out for being kids?
Part of it was the wide net that was cast
Okay.
this year, and so that's just going to be part of that ongoing training and discussing what is a threat versus what is not, where does it fall, how is it reported, and ensuring that we're training as many people as possible to be able to identify those warning behaviors.
It's just a very big outlier compared to the other categories too, so, which I guess that's the better one to be in, but still a lot of kids.
I also think, and Guidepost, I think even recognize this themselves, given our situation and where we're coming from, it would not be unusual to basically overreact to anything a kid said. And so a lot of these threat assessments is because somebody on the playground got angry over, you know, a game of tag and said, oh, I'm just going to whatever. And our people were just making that, referring that to a threat assessment. And again, I think that was very normal for where we were. And I think now we have to begin to look more carefully at these things. And I would suspect that this is the column that will go down. We probably would not want to stop assessing anybody that fell moderate and forward.
Rational.
So,
Where did Guidepost get their, if we got a 98% question about access to weapons, wasn't that pretty explicit, or was that a combination of the suicide and threat was their number? Because what was it?
It was 75, and there was 2 locations on the threat assessment 8400 form that we were using, number 5 and number 14, that inquired about access to weapons, and that's what they concentrated on instead of looking at the entire form 8400, because you could find it in other areas as well, but that meant going through all 117 of them.
And they just took a sample size?
well, plus,
and they only looked at the high school.
they looked at only the high school, and they did not look at anything after Navigate 360, did they?
Correct.
It was all the paper ones we had done, which would have been prior to April.
Thanks.
Okay, bullying. You can see that, again, let me explain the chart first. We started doing, and Steve can help me if I mess this up because he collected the data. First of all, there are a lot of investigations, and some of them do not really lead to discipline because it comes out that does not lead to a bullying classification in discipline because it did not meet the definition of bullying. which is frequent over time and with an imbalance of power. And then, some other descriptors. We also started the anonymous reporting in April at the secondary schools. We did not conduct them at the elementary schools because our signage, our wording, our protocol for getting them made just didn't really fit for elementary. That's being re-looked at by elementary principals. We had 16 anonymous reports, and we had other reports that weren't anonymous, leading to 12 investigations at the middle school and 5 cases of a student being disciplined for a legitimate bullying situation. At the high school, 7 of 8 were legitimately disciplined for bullying. The interesting thing about the trend is from April, May, and June, those numbers on the reports, as well as on the investigations, and as well as on the incidences of bullying, went down significantly. And you'll recall, even when we surveyed the students about the instances of bullying and how they felt about bullying, there were the 2 schools that had any significant number at all was the middle school and the high school, which is why our approach has been very targeted rather than a blanket across the whole district. And I think this Power School data kind of indicates why that was probably a good move to make. We had, if I'm not mistaken, Steve, the last couple of months of school, am I right? No instances at all?
Correct.
Right. So,
Just reported, right?
no instances reported
Or
Right.
investigated.
or investigated.
You have to do with the sun coming out.
You think the sun had that to do? Well, then let's hope for the sun all the time. That would be really nice.
To the staff at each of the buildings that help raise awareness to it and help communicate to the students in advisory and rolling out the importance
Yeah.
of, not only you being respectful to others, but being a upstander and not a bystander should you hear something and knowing who to report to.
You probably want to use the mic. But we have done, we did make this, as you know, a focus. The board asked us to make this a focus. We did. At the middle school, we added not only teacher training, advisory work with students, we also added the in-school suspension room so that we had another layer of consequences for students who didn't want to necessarily follow the rules at the first suggestion. The high school went down significantly. Maybe it was the sun, maybe it was the additional attention, I don't know. Maybe we got to the kids who were doing it. Maybe they got better at doing it and nobody could catch them, I don't know. But at any rate, our numbers went up better. That doesn't mean we're going to ignore this next year. Steve, do you want to just talk a little bit about what we have done and what's on the horizon? Because I think what you said back there, we might not have heard.
Okay, I won't be able to mirror exactly what I said, but I think, the improvements were likely the awareness that we raised in this process, which is the credit for our staff who helped roll that out. And at the middle school and high school, that would be through the advisory classes, just revisiting what the expectations are around behavior, and that ties to our PBIS programs, and then allowing students to have an anonymous reporting tool should they not feel comfortable, but certainly opening up that door for students to report directly to staff was also pretty important. So that's, in my opinion, why those numbers went down, and we didn't have any cases towards the end of the year.
There are no more questions. That's the report.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Board of Education matters. We have the bank depository signatures for all the bank accounts. Excuse me, so every year that has to be renewed, excuse me, just for the new people. So you have to put it into motion. And so that's what we're doing here. So the recommendation, anybody want to read that? Mary?
Move to approve that Oxford Bank, JP Morgan Chase, BMO Harris Bank NA, Flagstar Bank, Comerica, Fifth Third Bank, Huntington Bank, BNY Mellon, and Bank of America be named as depositories of school funds for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
Support. James? Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The next one is similar. It's another one about the bank depositories. It's about transferring funds between the two. A recommendation for action here. Mary, you want to read it again, please?
Sure, I'd love to. Move to authorize Sam Barna to transfer funds between depository accounts and transact wire transfers for investment purposes for the 2023-2024 school year with the approval of Dr. Vicky Markovich as presented.
Support. Dr. Reese? Discussion? No? Again, this is like a yearly thing. No questions? Okay. Vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to Section B, memberships. So these are, again, annual things that the Oxford Community School District has memberships in, but again, they do take and require action from the board. The first one is the MASB, which is the Michigan Association of School Boards. We utilize them for a lot of legality questions, a lot of training. We're, of course, open to take classes through them as members. So that's just a wealth of knowledge that we utilize them for as being members. So anybody want to read that one?
Take that one too.
Okay, Mary?
I don't want to take anybody else's time. Move to approve Oxford Community Schools Board of Education's continued membership in the Michigan Association of School Boards for the 2023-2024 school year at a cost of $9,161.06, which is based on student enrollment as presented.
Support? Colleen? Thank you. Discussion?
I would just like to add also, thank you, I'm sorry, I should be recognized.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would also like to add that they are advocates for public education in the state. They also spend time on looking at what's going on in the legislature, mostly at the state level, also at the federal level, have helped us coordinate meetings with our legislators here and in Washington, D.C., and they are a great voice for public education in Michigan. And they represent all of us. You know, everybody, every school board member, has an opportunity to vote on legislative priorities for a Michigan Association of School Boards. They have meetings where groups get together, they decide on the best choices that people can vote on for them to support. So it's not MASB saying we want this, it's the member organizations, the member school boards. So so people come together to get that list, but then individually as school board members, we are each given the opportunity to vote for what we think should be the legislative priorities for MASB. So there is one place we do have an individual vote. So they work really hard to represent all school boards in the state. So that's a lot of the work that they do. I think it's important.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The next one is the MHSAA. So this is for our athletic association, which our sports program is pretty much based in. It's our competitive rights to play against other districts in our county, in regionals and all of that. So anybody want to read it? Amanda?
Sure. Move to approve the MHSAA membership resolution for the year August 1st, 2023 through July 31st, 2024 as presented.
Support. Erin? Discussion? Okay, and the membership to that is free. It's of no cost to the district, but if we're not a part of it, then we can't be a part of setting up all of the scheduling of the sports and regionals and things like that. So, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The next section is going to be to appoint legal counsel, which obviously we have different legal counsel for different things that we handle in our district. This is outside of any litigation that's going on currently in the district. This is just day-to-day business. Anybody want to read that one? Dr. Reese?
Move to appoint Byrne Law Firm PC, Miller Johnson McNeil and Associates PC, Collins and Blaha Hageman LLP, Germanical Mullins and Horton PC, and Varnum LLP pursuant to the engagement letters dated May 12, 2022 and May 24, 2022, with Varnum LP as legal counsel for, I said all day, the schools, for 2023-2024 school year as presented.
Support? Colleen?
Support.
Discussion? I know it seems like a lot, a lot of them, but again, each one handles specifically something different. And this is
Right.
regulatory, like everybody does, has
Right.
multiple places, right, Vicki?
It's better to have multiple and then put all of your, first of all, each law firm sometimes has a specialty. Finance may be for one, personnel may be for another, special ed is another specialty, and so you tend to go to the law firm where you can get the best representation for that particular specialty.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So we're going to appoint people to handle different property matters and different jobs, if you will. So this next one talks about our properties and things that we might be doing in that area. Anybody want to read that one? Dr. Reese?
Move to appoint Dr. Vicky Markovich and Sam Barna to represent the Board of Education in all property matters and also authorize them to sign board-approved purchase, sale, and lease agreements on the board's behalf for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
Support? James? Discussion? So obviously, they would never go out and purchase something without discussing it with the board, just so like you guys know, but this just gives them the authorization to do so. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The next one is to designate newspapers for district publications. We want to read it?
I'm happy to.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Sure.
All right, move to designate the Oxford Leader and the Oakland Press for publication of legal notices for the Board of Education for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
Okay, support? Amanda? Any discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The next one, Mr. Wolf and Miss Anita, are for curriculum and instruction. Or just Mr. Wolf?
We're bringing back in hopes of an approval for the Blackboard curriculum for OVA, ELA grades 9 through 12. You guys received that presentation last board meeting from Caitlin Martin.
Okay. We want to read that? Go ahead, Mike.
Move to approve the Blackbird curriculum for OVA ELA grades 9 through 12.
Okay, support? Colleen?
Support.
Any discussion, or did anybody come up with anything since after they presented? Nothing? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next is Finance and Operations. Mr. Barna.
Good evening, everyone. So we have three items, actually there's four under Finance and Operations, and as you can see, the first is obviously the School Bond Qualification and Loan Fund. So we do this every year, just as a reminder, and especially to those that are new to the board. School Bond Loan Revolving Fund was set up many, many years ago, and we participate. It's a state-run program. And what that does is we levy for our debt, our bonded debt, 7.9 debt mills to district taxpayers. And that 7.9 debt mills does not cover all of our debt, our principal and interest. So because of that fact, we borrow from the School Bond Loan Fund on an annual basis. And so that is what you see from here. Currently, we have $8.6 million of an outstanding balance within the School Bond Loan Fund. And we most recently borrowed, you borrow twice a year if you need to borrow from the school bond loan fund. Normally it's in November or May. And so in May of this year, we borrowed roughly $500,000 to meet our bonded debt obligations. So,
Do you have any questions? Okay. Do we want to read that one? Mary?
Move to approve the school loan revolving fund resolution as presented.
Support? Amanda? Any discussion or questions for Sam on that? Mike?
Well,
Feel like you got something to say?
I think I'll just have to sit down with you at some point, and the questions I have are deeper than I can ask here.
oh, sure, that's fine. Yeah,
I know it's-
anytime.
Yeah. It's very confusing. I remember asking, do you remember I asked you?
I do, and it's a good
questions? I was
question.
like, I just don't get this.
No, it's okay. Just keep in mind, we know when we issue debt, we pass bonds in the district. When we do, all of that debt we pay, just like your mortgage, we pay principal and interest, and we've been paying that for years as a district, as all districts do. But we decided long ago, prior to me coming on the board at that time decided to only levy 7.9 debt mills to district taxpayers, so that it was a consistent debt for them, more consistent tax bill. But those 7.9 debt mills do not fully pay for
Don't
those
cover
principal
everything.
and interest, and so that's why we borrow from the school bond loan revolving fund in order to make those principal and interest payments on the debt portion.
So we would have to raise the debt bills to
That's-
not do that.
That's correct. That's
If that
correct.
makes any sense.
That's
We
absolutely
would have to
correct.
vote to do that.
Yeah, you would as a board, and again, that's just something that we've done consistently. Again, I've been here for approximately 8 years now, and so it's been much longer than 8 years that you've been levying that steady 7.9 debt mills to district taxpayers.
So that goes to the taxpayers
Yeah,
to cover one, because they don't meet in the middle.
Yeah.
They don't pay for it all.
that's correct.
Perhaps there's a question on when do we pay back the school loan?
Revolving fund. So the termination date for that program for us is 2037. So we still have a number of years left. And again, our current balance in that school bond revolving fund is approximately $8.6 million today.
And as I recall, the interest rate is
4.11 approximately, yeah, on average.
So was that figure in the packet, the 466,000?
That's correct. That's what we recently borrowed, actually, in May.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. You good, Mike?
Yeah,
No?
I'm okay.
Okay. Well, we'll go to a vote, and if you're not comfortable, then you can figure that out. And, I mean, you can vote appropriately and talk to him about
I
it.
understand.
Okay. Okay, so we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Transportation purchase for minibuses approval request. Ann? Any, okay, okay. Do you want to read that?
I can read it.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Move to approve the purchase of 3 Microbirds buses from Holland Bus Company for the amount of $104,616.
Okay, support? Aaron? Discussion? No, Ann's here to answer any questions if anybody has them. James?
Is this just a replacement of like 3 microbuses, so we're doing a like for like? We're not getting rid of full-size buses to microbuses? I meant to ask this last time, it popped up my head after.
Sure, that's okay. Yeah, what we're doing, we are doing a replacement. And so these are 3 used buses,
Okay.
just to be clear. And so we're getting a very good value. We've done this actually a number of years. It was probably, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. We've recently, as recent as 4 or 5 years ago, we purchased, I believe it was 2 minibuses.
Okay.
And it just works out well for us. These buses are approximately $70,000 brand new. These in particular, these 3 are very well cared for by another school district in the state of Michigan. And so we do know what we're getting, and they're obviously inspected by the state as well as our own technicians. So
Okay.
it's a good value.
Thanks.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the engineering mechatronics student laptops purchase. James, you want to read that?
Is that a question or no? Sure.
Well, it's in
Yeah.
your wheelhouse, so I
Yeah.
figured you'd want to.
No worries. Move to approve the purchase of 32 laptops from Intercom TSG for the total amount of $44,896.
Support? Mary? Discussion? We went over it last time, no? All those say aye, all those pass say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Last technology is for the student laptop purchase.
I'll
Big
read
one? Go ahead.
Move to approve the purchase of 16,000, or, let's try that again. 1,600 student Chromebooks from
That's a lot.
Intercom TSG for the amount total, or, see now I'm all messed up, let's start over. Move to approve the purchase of 1,600 student Chromebooks from Intercom TSG for the total amount of $568,192.
Support? Mary? Any discussion on that? All those approved say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Angela, is there any cards? Just one? Andrea? I know I saw her come in, there she is. Didn't see you back there for a minute.
Okay, so recently we found out that Dr. Henry was not licensed, so I have some questions about that, as he was a very integral part of our recovery here in Oxford. So my first question is, how did Dr. Henry begin his engagement with Oxford Community Schools? Did we reach out to him? Did he reach out to us? I think the community would like to understand how he came into play. Also, who was responsible for checking his credentials to make sure that he was licensed before he had interactions with our children? Not only did he have interactions with our children, but he had a rather large voice in making decisions regarding our trauma recovery with our students, including the memorials, taking them down, whether we could have names on them, many different issues that came up regarding the memorials that the students had very strong opinions on. I would like to know who was in charge of that. When did you first learn that he was unlicensed, and why were we not notified? Because he just kind of disappeared. So at some point it's obvious that you realized he wasn't licensed. So I think the community has a right to know when you were made aware and why were we not made aware. Also, how much was he paid? How much did we spend on Dr. Henry when he shouldn't have been here? I think that's something the community also needs to know, and where we could have put that money instead. It really does nothing to instill trust again. You know, a lot of us feel we were speaking out about Dr. Henry from the very beginning, that, you know, we've been asking who the experts are from the very beginning. He's the only one that's really ever been identified. And then to find out that he doesn't have a license does nothing to ensure trust with this. It's really infuriating to a lot of us. He had one-on-one interactions with our children. He led assemblies, especially on the first day back into the high school, which a lot of us were uncomfortable with. A lot of the kids were just straight up uncomfortable with him. And his specialty was not what he was here for. It was related to CPS issues, which isn't what we were dealing with. So why did we go with him in the first place? Also, it came out that the Attorney General had brought charges against him. It's just yet another reason, had we went with the Attorney General, that we would have known about Dr. Henry not having a license a long time ago. So I would like some follow-up on these questions. I think this community is owed an explanation to this. I think it needs to be an agenda item.
I'd like to clarify a few things right now, because, of course, I was not here when Dr. Henry was brought into the district, but I can answer some of these questions. Dr. Henry was recommended to the district by Oakland Schools because of his national acknowledgement on being an expert relative to trauma recovery. Oakland Schools developed a contract with Dr. Henry, and that's how he began his work here with us. When he worked with us, he was licensed. He had his license had to be, I'm not sure exactly how it lapsed, but sometime around 2017 or 18-ish, the license had lapsed. It had gotten called on by the licensing board. He appeared before that board. He was put on a limited license, and that limited license would allow him to do therapy. When you are a social worker, you have a license to be a therapeutic social worker. You also have the credentials to be a consulting social worker, so it depends on whether your work is consulting or whether your work is therapy in terms of whether or not this license was even necessary. At any rate, when he worked for us in 2021, his license was reinstated. He was collecting hours for a permanent license, and those hours that he's collecting are being supervised by someone who is permanently licensed. So any of the work he did with us at that time was also being supervised by this supervisory person. There was no cost to any of his services. There was some travel expenditures, but his services to us were covered, as I understand it, through a resiliency grant. We have not actually ended his service to us. His service to us at this very end was working with a small group of administrators at the high school level, and we will be talking to those administrators to determine whether or not the work needs to continue or whether or not they feel the work has been accomplished. His credentials in terms of his PhDs, in terms of his social work degrees, in terms of his being called upon as a national expert, I think are pretty much unquestioned, other than the fact that this license did lapse. When I talked with Mary Ware, who is the person in charge in Washington, D.C. of the National Victims and Resiliency Center, who is the first team to go on site in any kind of mass shooting, who was in fact brought on our site 4 months after the incident occurred here. When I asked Mary about who I could use as an advisor, because this was new to me, this work here, trauma and recovery. 30-some years as a superintendent, thank God I never had to deal with this before, so I needed advice. And Dr. Henry was one of the people she told me I should talk to, which I did, and he was very helpful in helping me understand what the district needed. So his licensing situation, the minute we heard about it, which was the same time everybody else heard about it, the Detroit News, we checked on it. The first thing we found out is that he was licensed while he was working with us. And he was meeting the conditions of that temporary license as he was working toward his permanent license. So I didn't want to wait for another meeting to let this information hang out there, because to a certain extent it's truly misinformation. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Scheduled activities, we've got a couple things still to tie up this summer Board of Education meetings. Our first day of school, just to announce, is August 24th, 2023. Administrative clarifications?
No more.
Any final board comments?
I'd just like to speak for just a moment. I want to thank all the candidates for the board member position for coming out and coming and answering questions in public. And I know that can be really challenging. Welcome back to Colleen. Thanks for joining us on the board. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's dedication to this community, and I can hear that from the people who spoke, you know, and I could read it in the information that they provided to us. I appreciate that folks really do love and care about this community, so thank you for stepping up.
Okay, anything else? I know summer school started this week too, so busy. Anything else? No? Meeting adjourned.